Well, what a week it has been for news here in South Florida. The violent shootout between police and those career criminals. Another visit by President Trump.
So much to break down with our Powerhouse Roundtable, and we have a great one for you today. Ed Pozzuoli is the president of the Tripp Scott Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale and past chair of the Republican Party of Broward County. Melba Pearson is the deputy director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida and a former prosecutor with the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. Stephen Johnson chairs Miami-Dade County's Black Affairs Advisory Board. He is an attorney with the Lydecker Diaz firm. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, everybody. We are so glad that you are here. I sort of want to get you all to weigh in. I think, Ed, you just said as we were coming on here that not since the shootout at Marjory Stoneman Douglas has our community been shaken to the core by such a violent incident. And I think we don't want to be Monday morning quarterbacks, but you see this video and you ask, I think there are legitimate questions to ask, are there not?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you had the father on him. It was sad, yeah. and hearts go to him. But on the other hand, there are a lot of questions. And before we jump to conclusions to assess blame, because we seem to try to jump to that, I think you've got to let the facts kind of spill out as they come out and as they're investigated. I think that's in fairness to the police officer involved and everybody involved. I think you really got to be careful about jumping to conclusions.
The community reacted emotionally, as can be expected, but I think, you know, what our job is as news people is to take an objective, harsh, clarified look, and that's what we're trying to do. But interesting point in that Marjory Stoneman Douglas and this incident, slaughter of innocents is what really captures the attention, but the police response was so different.
And you got to think about it, right? We criticized the police response in the MSD shooting, and now we're on the verge of yet again criticizing a police response. I'm going to say this, though. Until we know from the FDLE investigation whether or not anyone did anything wrong, until we know who was in command and control of that scene, until we know whether or not there was a breakdown in command and control, and I don't know that there was, but until we know that, it's hard to criticize police officers for doing two things: engaging bad guys and staying alive while doing it, right?
Armed bad guys.
We want them to, in the middle of a kidnapping. So we got to remember what the crimes were here. We had a kidnapping, we had a shootout in Coral Gables, we had shootouts on the roadways the whole way, and now we're there in an intersection and they're still shooting. Yeah. Right. So telling police officers or expecting police officers to somehow become bulletproof supermen is insane. And the bravery seen by some of those officers standing there, engaging, trying to at least get in there and save a life, we have to, for a moment, commend it. Now we should go back and criticize. We should go back
and at least review it.
Yeah,
we should review it.
Yeah.
Right.
Weigh in here, Melba.
Well, so first of all, my heart goes out to the families involved because, we're weeks away from the holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and now they're laying their loved ones to rest. And there's children involved who are not going to be able to see their loved ones. So I want to keep them primary focused on this. But the father is not wrong in wanting to have answers, as we all want answers. I'm sure the FBI and the FDLE investigation will reveal more, and we'll learn more about the protocols that were involved or were followed or not followed. But I do have a lot of questions with regards to if there was any opportunity to de-escalate this situation. Could spike strips have been used? I mean, we have so much technology. Could that have played a factor and saved lives? Yeah. And again, when you look at that crowded intersection and people are literally just trying to get home and suddenly there's bullets flying your way, I mean, that whole fact of the matter that the civilians were placed in danger, granted, no question, the people who perpetrated this crime set the wheels in motion. But it is on the police to make sure to contain the situation and keep people safe in the process. But we will know once we get the medical examiner's report and see which bullet killed who and all of that.
But
so
I want to emphasize, I want to give the police at least the benefit of the doubt because they did engage. The question is when Were there
wasn't
other
appropriate.
opportunities to engage, and did they engage appropriately?
Yeah.
That's something I think facts will come out later on. But
Exactly.
laying blame, and I understand completely where the family is, and I would feel the same emotion.
Oh, yeah.
But as a public policy standpoint, we want our police to engage and protect us from bad people.
I've often said that when the average American sees policing and what that is, sometimes they're not going to like what they see. And I've spoken to retired Chief Oates and other police officers to find out, was there anything broken here? And in and of itself, bad guys...
On this account?
On this account, yes. Bad guys shooting changes the paradigm, right? Because at that point, you're a risk to the general public, you're a risk to the other officers, that's a different animal than, a jewelry heist going wrong.
Yeah, these guys set the tone. The minute they walked into the jewelry store on Miracle Mile, fired, and thank God the clerk, the woman who was there, was grazed in the forehead, but she could have been killed as well. And then the shootout with the owner and the manager, the tone of this was set immediately, and it only escalated as it went further into Broward County.
And let's not forget that in addition to Frank Ordonez, there was yet another bystander, and that's the
Rick
part,
Henshaw.
Rick Henshaw, and that's the part that we want to remember. We do want to remember those two people who died for no reason.
For no reason.
No reason whatsoever, and their families.
I want to, the director of the Miami-Dade Police Department, Juan Perez, came forward Friday morning, talked really for a while, answered questions about training and policy. He was unflinching in his support for his people. Let's take a listen to a little clip of what the director had to say.
They dictated this, not law enforcement. We train and we practice, and we have practices in place for all types of situations. But unfortunately, training is a simulated situation, and the subjects, sometimes they don't dictate as we want them to. So they take actions outside of how we train, and circumstances sometimes aren't the ideal circumstances. Where that vehicle came to a stop, we didn't choose that location.
So I'm hearing, Ed, training, as great and thorough as it may be, and as often as it may be, can't ever come close to what might happen in real life.
Let me take the corollary to that. What he's saying is he does not want his officers hesitating in a real life it's not a training situation anymore where we can do it over and try it again. No, this is real life, and he does not want his officers second guessing themselves and causing them to hesitate, because that will cause further danger.
But at the same token, I still have to caution, maybe not hesitate, but you also can't have a knee-jerk reaction, because we have a situation where we have literally hundreds of rounds, because you have, 8 to 10 officers emptying their clip into a situation, and again, an innocent bystander was killed. So all due respect to the director, I'm not saying that there was a problem with the training or anything like that, but I still have the question whether or not this can be, what it could have been brought to a conclusion sooner in a more deserted area as opposed to the middle of rush hour traffic.
In my talks with, again, in trying to speak with others in law enforcement, this is one of those situations that they may not have particularly trained for. A shootout on a high-speed chase.
Well, that's a problem.
In rush. No, but let's think about this.
It's true.
Because in rush hour, where's the chase going, right?
That's why it stopped where it stopped. Exactly right.
So this might not have been a specific scenario that they have trained extensively for.
Quick break, and let's pick up right here when we get right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to a very thoughtful roundtable on this particular Sunday. Stephen Johnson, Melba Pearson, Ed Pozzuoli. Ed, you had mentioned as we were breaking away that Mr. Marino, whom we heard from earlier, distraught, grieving over the loss of his son, said he has never heard from any of the police agencies involved, only from the FBI, and no FBI agent fired a weapon at that scene. Should some agency, should Miami-Dade Police or Miramar, should they go to him and say, we're so sorry for the loss of your son?
From a human standpoint, the answer is absolutely they should. legally, I understand there may be some restrictions, but the bottom line is that they should, because some of the communication, some of the frustration that's built up by the victim's family, and rightfully so, is the lack of empathy that appears to be coming out of the agencies. And Stephen's going to
say, but these agencies, and again, we represent many of them. These agencies don't have an opportunity to come out. A lot of times they don't know what's happened. The Officers' Bill of Rights prevents you from really getting full stories right away often, particularly in shooting circumstances. If you want those warm and fuzzy moments, then we're going to need to change some laws. I'm all for making changes to the Bill of Rights. I'm just telling you.
No one's asking to script or get around some litigation. All somebody is asking for, this man is, any of us would want, was someone to even come forward and sincerely say, I'm prevented legally from saying a lot. I want you to know as a parent, I feel for you and your family. My condolences.
Yeah.
What's litigious?
a little
about
human
that?
compassion
Yeah,
would go a
milk
long
of human
way.
kindness.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. It'd be crushing for anything to happen to any of my children. I'll be honest. If someone gave me something like, I can't tell you anything, but I know how you feel, I wouldn't want to hear from you anyway.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. At that moment, unless you're going to tell me everything that happened, don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
The emotions are too raw.
Yeah, I do want to say on behalf of Miami-Dade Police Director Juan Perez, whom I have a lot of respect for, that the day that Joe Marino said, my son was murdered, he very calmly and with feeling said, I understand, I'm a father.
Yeah.
If it were my son, I might be saying this too. And I mean, he did not in any way criticize Mr. Marino.
Right.
Which, yeah, that definitely was a good idea and definitely is very sensitive on the director's part. But I think that still doesn't take away the fact that you have a victim's family left without answers. And I think, and I understand the legal perspective as a former prosecutor, I get it. But at the same token, there's a way to at least, say, I'm sorry that this happened. We have an ongoing investigation. We're going to do everything we can to get to the bottom of this and give you answers in a timely manner. By the way, here are some victim services. Here's a victim advocate who at least can direct you for grief counseling or something to at least show that you care and that you are taking the situation seriously. Not saying they're not, but to communicate that to the victim's family, which is huge, And
Being there and being available for that family
Right.
is simply the statement you need to make.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Right.
most departments have what's known as victims advocates or victim services advocates, which is an
When you were at
avenue
the state attorney's office, that was part of your responsibility.
Absolutely. We had victim advocates who would be with the family everything from the time of we're investigating, we're about to file, all the way till trial. You had somebody who you can call and say, what's going on with the case? Maybe you couldn't get a hold of the attorney, but you got some answers and were able to, help move forward a little bit.
The director even coming forward, because it's an FBI case now legally, the director coming forward Friday, instead of saying to reporters, no, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking, I thought showed a lot of leadership. I did. Was that a protocol breach of any sort?
No, and in fact, in these sorts of public controversies and matters, the transparency shown by a department or a department head goes a long way in making sure that the public feels informed. Again, we were talking about the same thing that the family wants to know. What's going on? Where are we? I remember North Miami actually led the way in its transparency during the Kinsey shooting, where they put every document online, including the FDLE investigation.
Yep.
And I'd like to see more organizations and more municipalities do these types of things.
Absolutely, because transparency is key in building that relationship with the community and diffusing some of these situations from getting out of hand.
I watched the statements. I thought the director's statements were very, very appropriate and very well measured, and really focusing on the tragedy, focusing on the victims, focusing on some of the protocol, whatever he could provide. I thought they were really showed great leadership, to your point.
All right, everybody hold your thoughts. We have more to talk about, including the visit to South Florida by President Trump. More on that in just a minute. Welcome back. Only if you could see what goes on here during the commercial breaks. Sometimes more interesting.
Maybe one day. We'll make that happen.
All right, let's move forward and talk a little bit about the visit to South Florida last night by President Trump. He first went to Turnberry Island, Aventura, my hometown. And Ed, I know you were there for at least part of that event. And the Republican Party of Florida says 1,000 people raised $3.5 million. Boy, that's a big number.
Quite a success. Quite a success. And honestly, a very enthusiastic group. I mean, the president was there. You had a governor who was there. You had the cabinet that was there. Leadership was there. You had a great event.
You know, but I have to say, as far as I can tell, since this statesman's dinner, as it was called, was a complete disaster about a month ago, it was only because Ron DeSantis got involved, called his friend the president and said, you got to come and be our headliner, that it really came together.
My experience with these kind of dinners is they're a disaster until they're not.
Story.
You know,
True story.
until you get a great speaker or until you get a great headliner.
Yeah.
And frankly, the governor could have been the headliner, and we could have raised $3.5 million alone.
Oh,
but the
please.
president brought a tremendous amount of enthusiasm.
And much more low-key than his appearance a couple of weeks ago at the BB&T.
If you take everyone's phone at the door
Oh,
and make sure that no one can say anything except positive things, especially when you're having two accused and or convicted war criminals on the stage with you. Yeah, a lot can, that happened. So everyone's phone was taken for a reason.
Right.
No, that happened.
Were you there?
I've got friends
okay.
I even have friends on that side of the aisle.
Did they send you contraband cell video?
I wish, again, there's a comedian who did that, and everybody gave him a hard time on Twitter. Now our president does this just for a local Republican dinner. I've never seen this in my life. I've been to a bunch of Democratic dinners. We never had to give one.
Yeah, but what do you have? 3 people show up?
Wrong. Here we go.
That might have started with Mitt Romney. Remember the Mitt Romney cell phone?
Right.
47%?
Well,
yeah, that might have started
what I
then,
said
right?
earlier was, look, if Obama had brought Suge Knight onto the stage and everybody clapped and gave them a hero's welcome, it would never leave the news cycle. But our president brings, no matter how you feel about it, people who admitted to murdering people onto the stage, and they got a hero's welcome.
He had the Navy SEAL with him last night?
He had 2. He had the 2 he just pardoned. One was the lieutenant who was who was convicted of ordering 2 motorcyclists shot.
Right.
The other one,
Iraq.
the other one was a guy who said, "Hey, I don't know what happened," until he got on Fox News a while later and said, "Hey, did you kill him?" "Oh, yeah, I killed him." That's not necessarily what I expect from my president when being presidential or when raising money. I wonder about that.
Right, and then you have the transparency aspect as well, because now you have, all of the Florida, leadership, from the governor and the cabinet and everyone there. I'm very curious to know what was discussed. Was it just purely, okay, let's raise money,
sunshine.
or were we talking about
I wish there was a camera on Ed's face.
or
Ed,
what really happened?
respond to that.
I would say it this way. Here's the thing. You got a president who was at BB&T, and you all were there.
Yes, we were.
And it was great entertainment. You saw the excitement in the arena. This was a tremendous success, $3.5 million. The previous event he went to, when he went to meet with Jewish leaders with respect to what great support he's been to Israel. This is a president who, like it or not, is busy and is doing all the right things in my mind to make look.
And
I'm
this is-
going
between golf outings, of course,
to say
but-
this.
And
I'm gonna
about
say
to
this,
be
Michael.
impeached, too. But
Can I just, before
that's
we
a
run
whole
out
other
of
sham.
we-
But
we-
anyway,
we are
talk about
out of time, but
I just
think
want
I
to
know
go
where
on
you're
record as
going.
saying Suge Knight would absolutely lead our newscast. Just saying.
Go
ahead.
This much I know.
There you go.
Stephen,
Thank you,
Melba,
everybody.
Ed, great to have you come in. All right, so to come, my personal perspective about that shootout. Did the police do the right thing?